Welcome to the Senate E12 Finance Committee, and I see I have some of my constituents from Rochester. Mr. Deason, welcome. We are thrilled that they made it up here. We hope they make it back. It looks pretty bad out there. Thank you, Mr. Deason, and the crew from Rochester, Minnesota utility investors. Members, welcome. Today is April 10th, 2019. We do have a quorum, and our agenda today, members and audience, is we have Senate File 7 in front of us. That is the delete all amendment. It is on the agenda. And if I could have a member please move Senate File 7. So moved. Thank you. Senator Dames has moved Senate File 7. Just a kind of a roadmap of what we're going to do today. I'll just make a couple brief comments about the bill before us, then we'll be taking amendments. We'll be marking up the bill, and then we'll be having conversations with members who also will have much to say, I'm sure, as well. And so just briefly, most of you were here yesterday in the audience. Senate File 7 is the Omnibus Education Finance Bill. It's a total budget of $19.78 billion. If passed, it would be the largest education funding bill in our state's history. New spending is nearly $940 million of new money, and that's about a 5.1% increase over the current budget. You'll notice as we go through the bill today that our priorities are seen in our largest investments. Number one is the formula, nearly $100 million. Safe schools, $75 million. And the early learning scholarships. That's where our priorities were. And you'll notice some other enhancements along the way. But there's a few things you're not going to see. You are not going to see tax increases. You're not going to see unfunded mandates. And you're not going to see controversial pieces of legislation here. So with that, we will begin. And I have a technical amendment to get the bill in the shape that it need be. Oh, Senator Dames moved the A7 amendment. Oh, and I'll move, excuse me, yes. So I'll move the A7 amendment. And that is the delete all amendment in your packets. And then the technical amendment, members, is A24. And I'll just have Ms. Hofer explain briefly this technical amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Before you is the A24 amendment to the A7 amendment on Senate File 7. This is a technical amendment that would make some corrections in the bill. There's a couple different ones. So there's 4 corrections in here that would refer to cancellations of current appropriations, and it corrects the cancellation date. So those are on lines 1.3, 1.4, 1.5, and 1.12. On line 1.6, there is an amendment that would correct the fiscal host for the curriculum review grant. On line 1.7, there is a technical correction for, I believe it was the mental health language that was originally from the Senator Jensen bill. So it would delete national and insert Minnesota. Lines 1.9 through 1.11 are a clarification on the treatment of the early learning scholarship dollars. This would specify that the commissioner must not give priority under the subdivision to more applicants who are resident to the district than the school district's original transition seat count. And that transition seat count was defined in the bill to be those seats that were awarded under the voluntary pre-kindergarten and school readiness plus program in fiscal year 2019. And then finally, let's see, lines 1.13 to 1.15. These have to do with the Professional Educator Licensing and Standards Board appropriation. So this would clarify that the licensure by portfolio appropriation is coming from an account in the Special Revenue Fund where those fees are deposited. Otherwise, there might be a little confusion as to whether that appropriation were to be coming from the General Fund or the Special Revenue Fund. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, members, any questions on this? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The A24 is adopted. Next, members, we have the A16 amendment. I will move the A16 amendment. This is an amendment from the PELSB. There are a couple additions that they think would be helpful. One has to do with teacher preparation programs for teachers of the blind and deaf, allowing a state-approved teacher preparation program from another state if there's no license, if none exist in Minnesota. And the second thing that this amendment does is it adds in some of the language in the Teacher Code of Conduct, or the Teacher Code of Ethics, on the prohibition of sexual involvement. It includes the word, they've added sexual and conduct or. So it's just a clarification. These are two things that PELSB thought was needed. So any discussion or questions, members? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The A16 is adopted. And I believe we have one more amendment. I have one more amendment. Which I don't see quite yet. Okay. Thank you. The A22 members. The A22 builds upon our current law regarding no lunch shaming. Currently, our law says that a participant that receives school lunch aid under this section must make lunch available without charge to all participating students who qualify for free or reduced priced meals. The participant must also ensure that any reminders for payments of outstanding student meal balances do not demean or stigmatize any child participating in the school lunch program. This was legislation that was passed several years ago, and the Minnesota Department of Education has, and the Governor Dayton had talked about how we had eliminated school lunch shaming, and we do ensure that every kindergartner gets free breakfast at school. However, there is still some concern on this, and so the Amendment A22 just adds some additional language, which is that each Minnesota school must develop reasonable and reasonable policies regarding regarding where the meal is served. I'm sorry, each Minnesota school must develop a policy that's clear and is posted on their website, clearly communicated to students regarding meal charges, and that the policy must be reasonable, well-defined, and maintain the dignity of students by prohibiting lunch shaming. We just wanted to add a little bit more to our current law to make sure that none of our students face lunch shaming, and we expect each school to have a policy in place to prohibit such and to maintain the dignity of every one of our students. So that is the A22. Members, is there any discussion on that? Senator Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will look forward to having a chance to compare this with my bill, Senate File 411, which was introduced early on, and I've made multiple requests for a hearing for that bill. That bill has a Republican author in the House and has passed on a bipartisan basis over there. This is a very simple proposal that is good for kids. And so I am really grateful that we're seeing something finally here to address it. This is, as we know, as you said, Madam Chair, we made an effort to correct this a few years ago. We have seen repeatedly that there are episodes happening in our schools, and we need to do this for our kids. It's too important. As I've said for years, these are issues that are important for schools to be able to make sure that their bills are being paid, but those are things that need to be handled between the adults in the schools, and the parents and the children need to be able to eat their lunch and go back to class and learn. And so it's taken a while to get here, but I'm really glad we're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kent. I think that's a goal that we all share that's so important for every one of our students. And I think these locally developed and displayed policies will help prevent any lunch shaming in the future. With that, all in favor of the A22 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The A22 has passed. And then I think there's a few more amendments. I believe that Senator Housley, do you have an amendment?
Madam Chair, I have the A15 amendment.
Okay, if the staff could pass that out, please. Senator Housley, this is the A15 amendment. If you could address your amendment, please.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. This amendment is one part of my bill, Senate File 238, that was heard earlier this year in committee. I'd like to thank the co-authors, Senator Eichhorn, Chamberlain, Uyghur, and Curran. Members, this amendment relates to the school transportation deficit that I've been working on for 7 years. You might recall there's around 90 school districts across the state that experience additional deficits to their budgets due to transportation sparsity. This amendment is the working group portion of my original bill that we heard in the committee and that was laid over. I understand with limited resources we're not able to add any additional funding this year, but the working group is still needed to try and find a solution. This amendment has no cost to our target, and I would appreciate members' support. And thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Any further comments, members? I accept this as a friendly amendment. I think Senator Housley has worked very hard on this amendment, this issue, and we'll look forward to continuing discussions on this. All in favor of the A15 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. The A15 has been adopted. And Senator Housley, while we got you on the mic there, I think you have another amendment as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the A18 amendment.
If staff could pass that out, please. Senator Housley, do you have a copy of that? Let's staff pass that out. I guess we don't have that yet.
Thank you.
Okay, Senator Housley, I think we have that A18 amendment. If you could discuss that, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This is for the ballot language. This was a bill that I've had the last couple of years, and it was in the omnibus bill last year that was vetoed, and so I'm bringing it back. We had Peace in the Valley on this. In the ballot language has to be posted with the Department of Education. The proposal when you go out for a bond, a referendum, the ballot question submitted by the school School board must state the name of the plan or the plans being proposed by the district as submitted to the Commissioner of Education for review and comment. So that the issue was, and I think you remember, one of my school districts didn't feel that their district spent their levy dollars after it passed on what they said it was going to be spent on. So this would just make sure that on the ballot that the proposal that the school district put out there would be posted with the Department of Education for review and comment.
Thank you, Senator Housley. I believe this also is a friendly amendment. We have all heard this numerous times. We always love peace in the valley, Senator Housley, and so we'll accept this as a friendly amendment. All those in favor of Senator Housley's which number is it? 18 amendment, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. The A18 is adopted. Senator Uyghur, I believe you have an amendment.
Yes, Madam Chair, I have two amendments maybe to help facilitate the processing of paper. One is the A12, the other is the A21.
All right, which one would you like to do first?
A12 first.
Okay, if we could ask staff to pass out the A12, please.
And Madam Chair,
thank you, Senator Uyghur. The A12, if you could describe that, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The A12 amendment addresses notification to students, parents, and staff when there has been an environmental hazard warning given by either the Department of Health or the Pollution Control Agency. And the issue, and I did bring this up in committee earlier this year, and I believe Senator Chamberlain did as well, but in White Bear Lake, White Bear Township, in Gem Lake particularly, just less than 100 days ago, there was a big amount of anxiety, scare about possible carcinogenic impact from emissions from a water gremlin, a manufacturer. The largest fine in Minnesota history has been levied, but there's been a lot of meetings in the community. The schools have been filled in community meetings, getting more information about what is the impact. This makes clear that when this type of a hazard is present, that there's notice as soon as practicable to staff, students, et cetera. And we've talked a bit about this. We've talked about other types of hazards that exist. I had also asked the Department of Health and the PCA for language, and this reflects that. And I would yield to Senator Chamberlain. We share the same district, but it applies to all of Minnesota, this, but just to underscore the importance, and there's other legislation just related to tetrachloroethylene, TCE, and on the floor we'll see more of that discussion.
Thank you, Senator Uyghur. I thank you for bringing this forward. There's one thing that we want every student to know. When they go to school, it's a safe place. So I appreciate you bringing this forward. All those in favor of the A12 signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, say no. The A12 is adopted. And Senator Uyghur, I believe you have another amendment as well?
Yes, Madam Chair, the A21.
If we could have staff pass that out, please.
Madam Chair, members, this creates the Minnesota Reads Action Council. It's advisory, optional for the Commissioner of Education. We've had a lot of good discussion about the importance of reading. Everybody supports literacy to meet the goals that we have for the state for reading proficiency, at that third grade level. We had testimony that we are not at goal. In fact, we are stagnant and losing in certain areas, particularly for students of color. And it's alarming. We need to have all hands on deck to come up with a comprehensive long-term plan. And this puts together a group, an action council with various stakeholders, and there's very specific duties listed at subdivision 9, where they will look at some of the best practices, make a rigorous assessment of what's been proven correct and working, and then come up with ideas so that we can really meet the goals that we say for world's best workforce. And if we say we want students to be proficient in reading and we're significantly below that, how are we going to get that? And so that's the basic intent. I've had the opportunity to discuss this with you, Madam Chair. You've made some very good suggestions, and let's stand for any questions.
Thank you, Senator Uyghur. I do appreciate this amendment. I think we all do. We know how important it is that our kids are great readers by the end of 3rd grade. If not, they're going to struggle. And it was quite concerning to see the chart that showed that it will be 2064 before our English language arts standards are fully adopted, and our kids cannot afford to wait that long. Members, any further questions or comments on the A21? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. The A7 is adopted. And I believe, I'm sorry, the A21, excuse me. And then I believe, Senator Clausen, you have an amendment. Is that correct?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, the A13.
If we could have staff pass out the A13, please. Thank you. Senator Clausen, I believe everybody has a copy. To your amendment, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, this amendment was in the 2018 omnibus bill that was vetoed, and also it was in the former Board of Teaching statute. The amendment is related to the Professional Educator Licensing and Standards Board, or PELSB. I think all of you are familiar with PELSB, but it's responsible for overseeing and implementing teacher licensing for the state, including adopting rules to license public school teachers, adopting rules and providing teacher preparation programs, issuing, denying license applications, suspending, revoking, denying license based on candidate qualifications. What this amendment does, and I'll read it, the public employer of a member of PELSB shall not reduce the member's compensation or benefits because of the member's absence from employment while engaged in the business of the board. So in other words, when the board meets at their monthly meeting and the person is a public employee, the employer could not dock a person's pay for serving on the committee. PELSB is totally a volunteer board. PELSB also has the ability to hire substitute teachers and pay for them if the person happens to be a teacher. And also, I have a handout, if I could get someone to hand this out. This provision is also in BOSA. The provision is in BOSA, the board of that supervises school administrators. And so it'd be very consistent within both boards that have the same provision and would provide and not take away compensation for people that serve and use as their volunteer time.
Thank you, Senator Clausen. Thank you for bringing this forward. As so often happens, as we make new laws, sometimes they don't totally capture all the intended pieces. I appreciate you bringing this forward. Does anyone have any questions on the A13? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The A13 is adopted. And Senator Uyghur, or Senator Clausen, you might have one other amendment. Is that correct?
I do have one more, yes, Madam Chair. The A20 amendment.
If we could have the A20 passed out, please.
This is the fee for the BOSA.
Senator Clausen, to the A20.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, the 820 amendment refers to the Board of School Administrators, and this would increase the annual fee for licensed school administrators from $75 to $100. Now, this fee of $75 is, I can recall paying for this probably in 2002, so it hasn't increased for a number of years, and it would be a $25 increase. The Board of School Administrators is responsible for developing and implementing standards and rules governing school administrators' licenses in our state, very similar to Pellsby. And this $25 increase would help in the financing of the board.
Thank you, Senator Clausen. And so I do want to be just very clear that the Board of School Administrators and their members have asked to have this fee increased.
That is correct, Madam Chair. They approved this at a previous meeting of the board.
Thank you. So it has been approved. And then if I could call on Ms. Hofer, you know we must have a balanced bill as we leave here. So if you could explain a little bit about how this requested fee increase would impact our necessary budget balance.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. Under Senator Clausen's A20 amendment, two things would happen. So first, on line 1.3, it would increase the school administrator fee from $75 to $100. If this was amended onto the bill, it would increase revenues by approximately $87,000 per fiscal year. Under the bill here, it would also increase appropriations to the Board of School Administrators by $87,000 per year, and as a result, it would have a net zero cost to the general fund.
Thank you, Ms. Hofer. That's what we needed to hear. Are there any other comments, members? I believe this is a friendly amendment. All those in favor of Senator Clausen's, I lost the amendment number, the A20, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Okay, the A20 is adopted.
Madam Chair, could I just
Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question of clarification. There was concern by the BOSA board that this money that's being collected, additional about $87,000, will be available to be used by the committee. I just want to clarify if that is correct, because there is some language on page 112, line 1819, about a change in where that money goes. It used to go to a special revenue fund, and then it's been moved to general fund. And I just want to clarify that the money that the increase of $25 will be available for the BOSA board as part of their budget.
Thank you, Senator Clausen. It should, because that's how we're appropriating it, and we also have the legislative intent that you have mentioned today as well.
Very good. I appreciate the clarification, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members, are there any other amendments? Seeing none, I believe we are ready to vote. Or no, further comments. Let me ask Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have another amendment, if I may.
Senator Clausen, could you repeat that, please?
I do have an amendment, Madam Chair, A11.
Oh, if the staff could, Senator Clausen, you've been recognized to present the A11, but if you could wait until we have it in members' hands, please. We have not seen this amendment. So let's pass out the A11, which is a Senator Clausen amendment. It must be well under there. It's taken a while to dig that out. Just hold on a second until we get it in front of us.
Madam Chair, I was under the...
Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was under the impression that we had a copy of this.
We do not yet, but we'll get one. Okay. So it's the A11. Members, if you have any other amendments, if you could make sure that they are, the staff has copies for them so we don't hold up our committee time here. So any other amendments, please get them to staff or get your own copies made so that they could be handed out right away.
Madam Chair, I apologize that I'm slowing up
Senator
the
Clausen, this is not a problem. We just don't want it to be a recurring theme.
I don't think so. We're waiting for them to run copies of my amendment. Yeah. I think I may have extended my welcome on Madam Chair?
Senator Clausen.
Perhaps I could explain while we're waiting. Would that be okay?
Senator Clausen, we'll wait until we get the amendment. That's just a good practice so members can actually see what you're talking about. We've tried to do that all day today, so we'll continue to make sure we get the amendment.
Again, I apologize for this delay.
Senator Clausen, to your amendment, Senator Dames, did you have a comment? Okay. Senator Clausen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, this has to do with a charter school and charter school policies regarding enrollment. And most school districts have in place various procedures for admitting students from outside the district and other considerations about transferring within a district. And this has to do with the Prairie Creek Community School. It's near Castle Rock in south of the Twin City area. It has approximately 180 students serving students in kindergarten through grade 5. And under the current lottery system, there are families who live in the immediate area of Prairie Creek who were not enrolled because of the lottery system. And they also had siblings that attended the school. So it kind of places an additional burden upon families where they have some of their children going to the Prairie Creek Community School, and then they have others that are going, I believe, to the Faribault School District. What this bill does is basically allows the local students to attend their local school. In the case of the families in the Prairie Creek area, some of these families literally live right across the street but are denied attending the charter school of their choice. So basically what this does, the amendment has the support of the families in that area and will allow them access based upon siblings attending that school and also their immediate location to the school. So that's really the content of the amendment.
Thank you, Senator Clausen. Well, I was checking. This sounds a little familiar to another proposal that we had as well. You know, in this case, though, the charter school is all funded by state aid. There is no local property taxes paying for this charter school. And, you know, these type of things, while I definitely understand, and they come up occasionally. There was one up in Duluth as well, and there's another one in southern Minnesota. You know, that goes against the very heart of the charter school movement, and that is the fact that charter schools are open enrollment. Any parent can send their child there, and usually there are too many parents who want to send their kids to a charter school, as you're seeing here. And the lottery system is the fairest way to do that. So I will speak against this as an unfriendly amendment. I understand parental choice. I don't know the actual non-charter school in that area, but we would hope that that non-charter school could make movement and changes in its either curriculum or operations that would be such that those parents would want to stay in that public school. So I encourage a no vote on this particular amendment. Any other comments, members? Okay. Senator Torres-Ray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to ask the senator about kind of I'm trying to locate myself in this community and understand the value and the reason of trying to provide preference. Could you tell us a little bit about who are the people who live in the Castle Rock Township? Sure.
Senator Clausen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Torres-Ray, this is more of a rural community. Castle Rock is describing it, I guess, as south of, well, would it be south? It's not south of Lakeville, there we go, and north of Northfield. And so it's in a rural area, just outside the Twin City area. So it serves a lot of families who are agricultural-based, farming communities. And so that's pretty much about the community that it serves.
Thank you, Senator Clausen or Senator Torres-Ray. Members, this will not be a friendly amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The amendment is not adopted. Any other amendments, members? Seeing none, let's open it up for comments. I know that, let us adopt the A7 as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The A7 as amended is adopted. And then I know that education is important to every one of you. That's why we serve on this committee. And if there are any comments, members, this is a good time for those comments. Senator Uyghur.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and members. And yes, like you and the 12 of us that have been here since January, over 40 hours of meetings. And I praise all of you for your attention, the great attendance. I respect the diversity of opinions that we have at the table as well as in Minnesota. Madam Chair, I'll start with, there's many items that I support in the bill, and I commend that given the lousy target that you have. But the safe school revenue, the flexibility, and the amount of revenue that's going to go to schools, charters, could be more for intermediates, but it's a great investment. It's needed. We heard that, and I praise that. And maybe 10 or other things I'd like to just shout out. The kindergarten readiness assessment, something that Senator Ralph and I had both provided testimony on. It's important that we have a better idea as to where students are at, given the significant investment we're making in early education. And we know high quality early ed will make you ready for K. That's what the evidence shows. And getting that assessment in place, like the majority of other states do, I'm pleased that that is in there. Many provisions addressing reading, effective reading programs, and then adding additional language today. That pleases me. Competency-based education. We had great testimony earlier on that, and it's reflected. It shows the values, too, and I appreciate that you always have that in the horizontal square on the agenda to remind us of why we're here. And I believe the competency-based education, just the spirit of enthusiasm from the teachers, the principals, and students, others that have been involved. I remember that so well, and having met some of those people. Informing parents and teachers about test results on a timely basis is so important. We've been hearing, you need to get that feedback and put in a plan for remediation, whatever action needs to be taken, and that's an important provision for parents and students and staff as well. The special ed paperwork, we have heard that throughout the state, and we continue to hear it. And yes, some work perhaps still needs to be done, but it needs to be done. There's been interim study and bipartisan support on that. Addressing PSEO enrollment and the additional opportunities for providing students. So important. I salute Joe Nathan, all the others that were the trailblazers in this area. There's a lot of particular grants and programs, whether it's music or the SANE program, mental health grants, music. These are very good programs. They're going to help students, and it's with the mission that you've embraced, and I support those and others. But as I said earlier, the target, it's abysmal. And you made reference earlier that it was a large investment, but we're going to get a lot of feedback, members, during the break. And we're going to hear, well, if you think it's a large investment, this is how it's going to affect our district. We heard from Gary Amoroso with the dipstick survey, I believe he termed it, and that districts, I think we're totally not expecting a half and a half. And at the end of the day, we're not going to have that. But in my own districts, and they thought a worst case scenario might be 1 and 1, and it's at least $1 million that's going to be cut in each of my districts. You're going to hear from yours as well. There's a couple, I guess, where there wouldn't be a cut, but mostly it's going to happen. The other area is on the 4-year-old early ed, the pre-K 4, those 4,000 slots. And many districts have made provisions, even in the building planning, parents that relying on that, and it does have a big fiscal impact. And rather than reading some of those, you'll hear more about that. But it's $1 million or $2 million in many of the suburban districts, but this impacts all of Minnesota. And so I strongly hope that when we get through this resolution in conference committee, that it will be addressed. Ideas that work, like full-service schools, QComp, where a high-quality program that Governor Pawlenty had championed, and I had mentioned that before. And I have a school district that's number 2, White Bear Lake, waiting to get on that waiting list. So hopefully, Madam Chair, we're going to get the target at a much higher rate. I believe all of us want that. And of course, there was a chance a few weeks ago to have that higher target. It didn't happen. I'm very optimistic. It will, May 6th. And within 40 days, we will get this peacefully resolved. And I will vote yes with that optimism that it will go much higher, that I know you're committed to it, and so am I.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Uyghur. I'll just say that, yes, all targets are tough, and where there's always more that we want to do, and I appreciate your support. And I'm glad that we were able to fund 0.5 and 0.5 on the formula. That's not necessarily where we will end up. We know how negotiations go. But I noticed that in 2011, Governor Dayton proposed 0 and 0, and the final bill ended at 1 and 1. So that was difficult, I'm sure. Now, I wasn't here in 2009, but in 2009, the Senate proposed 0 and 0 on the formula. And that final bill actually did include 0 and 0 and an education budget freeze. So I'm sure those were very hard votes for those of you who were here then. But I think what we saw today is the importance that everyone realizes that education is our future, and our children's futures are very much determined by the education that they receive. We want to make sure every kid in Minnesota enters school ready to learn and receives the education that prepares them for jobs and careers of tomorrow. But I'm sure there are other comments. Who else would like to comment? Senator Uyghur.
Chair, briefly, I did want to also mention special education. And you're a former special ed teacher, and I know you understand the importance of addressing the cross-subsidy. Paperwork is addressed. Hopefully, there'll be a good resolution on that. But this was number one, even above formula by many districts. I remember the Duluth school district talking about the significant impact on its budget. I'll mention White Bear Lake again, where they have continually said, please, we need some help. There are proposals in the other body, and hopefully we will have that opportunity in conference committee to provide needed help, but at least on a cross-subsidy freeze.
I'm optimistic too, Senator Uyghur. Other comments, members? Senator Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's interesting that you bring up those precedents from 2009 and 2011. I think it's worth pointing out that that was at a time when our state was really economically on its knees during what was the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. And so here we are. Our structural budget situation isn't great, but as many like to point out, we have a surplus right now. And so I do think it is challenging that we are here looking at a half and a half going forward. As Senator Uyghur mentioned, we heard from both Mr. Amoroso yesterday and also Mr. Kroonquist, who had done a survey of some of the metropolitan school districts. And my two of my school districts, Stillwater and South Washington County, are both looking at more than $5 million shortfall over the biennium. And that's at 1% annually. 1% both years. So these will be significant challenges for our school districts, and I know everybody's trying to put an optimistic face. I am a glass half full kind of person myself, but the fact is this target was established by the Senate leadership saying this is where we want to be. And I think we have to acknowledge that this, I get that not everybody at this table necessarily agrees with it, but that was what was established as the target. And in a time of surplus, and it is a real unfortunate statement about where priorities are when it comes to education that we are in this position. And so while I appreciate that there are some good things in this bill, programs that make a real difference for kids, many of which I have fought for and supported, I cannot support a bill that shortcuts our students the way this one does.
Any further comments, members? Senator Chamberlain.
Just briefly, it is challenging and difficult to be in this position, but I think just a quick note on Senator Kent did mention that our structural budget is in trouble. We're broke, and we're not going to get out of this broke position for quite some time for a lot of reasons. We have to be sharp and smart about how we do things in this state, but we're going to be broke. That surplus we talk about, it's a few hundred, maybe $500 million, and that just doesn't go very far. So do you fund HHS? Do you take care of our disabled, which the governor hasn't decided he isn't going to do that just yet? What do you do with it? Where do you put it? And these are tough decisions. I think it's good that we start with 0.5 and 0.5 and do some of the other things we've gotten accomplished in this bill. It's a good starting point. But folks, we're broke, and the state's got to find smarter, better ways to do things. And as we move forward, for our kids and for everybody else in all those other positions, for folks in the disabled community, group homes, all across the board. So these are tough decisions, but these are not made in a vacuum either. We're going to try to do the best we can with K-12 because it is important. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Chamberlain. Any further comments? Senator Swedzinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minnesota's got the finest schools in the nation. We all know that. We respect that. We admire that. And it's not just because of the hard work by this committee. It's by a lot of the stuff that you guys bring to us. You guys all make us better people on this committee, and you make all the teachers and students in this state better. But with that said, I've got 5 quick comments to make. Number one, the 0.5 on the formula is just truly, truly unacceptable. The lack of testimony during this session by teachers and students, whenever students do come in, we all applaud and admire and we go, oh my God, it's so great that you kids are here. But not enough of them are coming in. We're not hearing about all these impacts that are having upon the students. And yesterday, we had 40 people come testify, and only 3 of the people that came and testified were teachers. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. It's just a structural problem with the committee process that so few teachers can take time out of their day because they know the importance of being here, but they just can't, they don't have the luxury of finding a sub and preparing a lesson plan and coming down here to testify. And we need to hear from the teachers and the impact these things are going to have on their day-to-day lives. The second thing I just want to say real quickly, one of our peers in government, in the executive branch, is faced with 2 lawsuits that are going to be $4.7 million. And if we don't help our peers in the executive branch by funding those 2 lawsuits, that branch is going to lose 20% of their staff. That is another unacceptable thing in this bill. Senator Uyghur mentioned paperwork reduction. Every single special ed teacher that's come down here in the last this whole session has talked about the importance of paperwork reduction, and a lot of stuff in this bill does reduce it, but it's a drop in the bucket. The special ed teachers in this state we can't keep them in the classroom because their morale is so low. This bill, in my opinion, it's woefully unpreparing the students for the 21st century. We never hesitate in spending money for STEM. But when it comes to civics education and when it comes to financial literacy for our juniors and seniors, we're dropping the ball. And lastly, the safe schools, which we all believe in and we all want, each district will get $32,000. That's $32,000. That won't pay for one counselor. It won't pay for one social worker. It won't pay for one correctional security person. And so those are my 5 quick comments on this bill, but I'd like to finish with how I started. This great state's educational system happens because of the work by this committee and because of you people here that have testified for the last 3 months, and I thank you all.
Thank you. Any further comments? I'll just make a couple notes and then some final comments. Just a couple corrections for the record. The Safe Schools money, the $32,000 is the floor for the very smallest school. So I just want to make sure you have the accurate information on that. There's a spreadsheet that should be in your packets that looks at that. You're welcome to let me know if you need that spreadsheet. Secondly, we want to make sure that the 4,000 voluntary pre-K slots that were that one-time funding of $50 million in 2017, I want to be clear that that funding is continued. It is continued in a targeted manner with targeted parent scholarships. And those sites that have been operating, these VPK sites in 2018 and 19, are in a very good position, of course, they've had a 2-year head start, so to speak. We believe that they will compete well for those scholarships. And I believe that many parents have already experienced the VPK in their local public schools, and I think they might choose to very well use those scholarships there in the future. So I want to make sure it's clear that those scholarships can be used at those 4,000 VPK sites. And then lastly, I thank the committee for your dedication to students. And as we start, as was said on our agenda, we focus on students. We fund what works. We know education is the great equalizer. It is, in a significant sense, it is the moral issue of our day, the racial issue of our day, and the economic issue of our day. And we have taken what is our budget target, and we have focused our state resources on providing opportunities for all Minnesota students to receive an education that prepares them for the jobs of tomorrow. And we've done some innovations along the way as well. We are seeking better results. We know that we will pass this bill. We look forward to that that May 6th date. I told Senator Uyghur I have that marked on my calendar. Our legislative leaders, Governor Walz, Majority Leader Gazelka, Speaker Hortman, have all talked about having those 3-way budget targets by May 6th. And that will be incredibly helpful for us as we move forward into what our final bill will look like. And I want to particularly thank the staff who have spent hours and hours putting together all of the materials that we have before us, and the fact that they are able to, at a moment's notice, prepare and present the amendments that come on the fly, and the invaluable and institutional memory that many of our staff members have has been incredibly important. We could never do something like this and as important as this without their great help. So I thank Ms. Butler and Mr. Marcus and Mr. Cook and Ms. Reynolds, Mr. Arneson, Ms. Hofer, and of course our pages. In fact, pages, I'd like you to just come up and stand up. We want to thank you for keeping us on track. And I believe we don't have Senate rules here for the floor, so I believe we can clap for our pages while we are. So members, with that, I thank you so much. And I believe that Senator Kent may have one more comment before we vote this bill out. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the recognition you've just given to our staff who do work so hard. I just want to make sure we include Ms. Elling, who also works hard as a part of this effort. So I wanted to mention her name. And Madam Chair, also, if I may, I'd like to ask for a roll call and ask this be included in the journal. Thank you.
Are there 3 members? There will be a roll call. And to be included in the journal, it would take 3 members. Are there 3 members? Seeing 3, there will be a roll call, and it will be included in the journal. With that, Senate File 7 as amended be recommended to pass and re-referred to taxes. All those, well, let's start with the roll call.
Senator Nelson?
Yes.
Senator Anderson?
Yes.
Senator Chamberlain?
Yes.
Senator Clausen?
No.
Senator Swadzinski?
No.
Senator Dames?
Yes.
Senator Eichhorn?
Yes.
Senator Housley?
Yes.
Senator Jasinski?
Yes.
Senator Kent?
No.
Senator Torres Ray?
No.
Senator Uyghur?
Yes.
There being 8 yes votes and 4 no votes, the motion prevailed. Our meeting, our business for today is completed. Thank you all, and this meeting is adjourned.